Folks, we are at the pinnacle of talking season, but the good news is that the talking is almost over. Well, it really never stops, but it's at least going to be supplemented by play on the field. And of course, we will get to Big Ten Media Days and a preview of that here in the next 60 minutes. Leave your comments and questions as always there in the live chat. This is Ohio State Buckeyes Live for a 168th edition here at the Voice of College Football. I'm Mark. That's Steve. Steve Hellwagon Buckner at 247 Sports. And missing Kevin and Tony this week. Hope to have them back soon. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad we could get together today. A few days before we head to Indianapolis for the Big Ten Media Days, and looking forward to that. And that's always kind of the unofficial kickoff of the season. They'll start practice early August, and everything geared up toward the first game, obviously, against Notre Dame on September the 3rd.
1 week ago, of course, we talked about the commitment of Jason Moore and the significance of that, not just because he's a talented player out of the state of Maryland, but from the defensive side of the ball, being the top recruit to the 23 class. Jelani Thurman, going back to the offensive side as a tight end, is another one pushing the top 100 players in the nation, and he just committed here in the last 3 days.
Yeah, tremendous get, obviously, for Ohio State to add Jelani Thurman. He's the second tight end in the class, joining Ty Lockwood, both of them ranked among the top 150 or thereabouts in the country. Lockwood, 135. He's the number 9 tight end in the country out of Tennessee. And now Jelani Thurman, 6'5", 230. He's the number 7 tight end in the country out of Georgia. So they're going into SEC territory once again and pulling out a top player that everybody wanted: Alabama, Auburn, Michigan State, Clemson. 29 offers for this guy, Jelani Thurman. And the Buckeyes take him out of there. A lot of people talk about him as like an athletic tight end who can make all the catches and do everything that you're looking for. Great height and an elite frame, long arms, just does it all. Has been a flex wide receiver, an H-back, a tight end, and can do a little bit of everything, I guess, and can catch the ball away from his body and make plays with the ball after the catch. So, this is a guy, a receiving tight end that maybe they can use to continue to energize this offense. And once again, a guy, an outstanding offensive player, wants to play at Ohio State. What a surprise that we see that in this day and age, obviously.
Jelani Thurman, 31 catches, 479 yards this last high school season as a junior, 15.5 yards per reception and 7 touchdowns. And yeah, everybody's rushing down to Florida and Georgia and the contiguous states to grab football players. But of course, in Ohio State's case, they're one of the few, if not maybe the only, and you could make a case for maybe a Penn State or a Notre Dame or a Michigan at times, but to not only go down to Georgia and Florida, because everybody goes down there, but people are grabbing, the 200th player in the state of Florida, or, the Nebraskas of the world or the Minnesotas of the world are going down to Florida. But to grab a guy that everybody wants, Ohio State may be the only team from north of the Mason-Dixon line, or what once was that is able to go down there and make hay.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, you look at this class, and I'll just punch it up here real quick on my computer if I can do it. Let's see here. Looking at the breakdown: 6 guys from Florida, 6 guys from Ohio, 2 guys from Georgia, and then 1 each North Carolina, Maryland, Connecticut, Tennessee, and Texas. So they're really covering the map side to side and up and down. Not a lot west of the Mississippi just yet, but give them time. They've still got some guys out there that they're recruiting from across the country. But 6 guys from Florida, that kind of says it all. 2 guys from Georgia. So they're not letting state boundaries or local biases hold them back. They are going after the top players they can get on a nationwide basis, and obviously still some more work to be done in this class. Let's see here. It is 19 commitments, and my guess is they're going to end up around 23 to 25 when it's all said and done, because as we know, last year Ryan Day liked to take a few extras because the transfer portal took a bite out of the Buckeyes, obviously, as the year wore on. So I think they oversigned by 5 or 6 last February, and will probably do the same this year.
So as we move forward, Steve, who do you have your eye on that could be, on the horizon to make an announcement here?
Yeah, there are a couple guys that are out there that are still, ready to pop, ready to make a decision. I know that John Walker, an outstanding defensive tackle from Zephyrhills, Florida, is one of those guys. He is an outstanding prospect from the state of Florida, defensive tackle. I think he's right around number 90 nationally. Walker is. And obviously, you can't have enough big guys who can run and make plays. That's kind of the first rule of this whole thing. And John Walker certainly would meet that criteria as you look at it. He's a guy that the Buckeyes have been in on early and really pushed. I was wrong when I said Zephyrhills, Florida. He's from Kissimmee, Florida, Osceola High School, ranked number 99 in the country, 6'3", 310 pounds. And he's got a ton of offers in his own right. A lot of speculation that, believe it or not, Central Florida may be the team to beat on him. And obviously, they've been a powerhouse in the American Athletic Conference in recent years and done pretty well down there. Probably right now the best program in the state of Florida. Now, I'm just joking, because I think a lot of people think Miami, Florida is going to be a top 15 team this coming year, and Florida could be a top 25 team if everything kind of goes their way. Florida State's still kind of finding their way at this point. But Central Florida's done some great things, obviously. And there is a push for him to stay home and play at Central Florida. But John Walker very much considering Ohio State, playing the Big Ten. And we should have his announcement a week from tomorrow on the 28th is when he kind of put down that he would make his announcement. And so I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. The other guy that I'm kind of looking at right now is a guy by the name of Desmond Umeozulu, and I'm going to punch him up here on my computer as well, because I believe it or not, I do not have all the information on all these guys committed to memory. But he is from Upper Marlboro, Maryland, from Charles Herbert High School, 6'6", 240 pounds, ranked the number 163 player in the country, number 19 edge rusher, defensive end, number 3 overall in Maryland, and he's got a ton of offers. And he told Bill Kurlick from our staff, who handles a lot of the recruiting coverage, that he could make a decision anytime in the next several days. So I'm not saying it's Ohio State. I'm not crystal balling him to Ohio State or anything like that. But Desmond Umeozulu could be another guy that could help Ohio State build that fortress up front on the defensive line. They're trying to get it rebuilt and reloaded, and could be a guy certainly there that you're looking at. So there's a couple guys. I know the last week or so, Ohio State still has the number 1 class, Mark, but there were a couple guys that slipped through the net here the last few days, and it's got a lot of people. Even though you've got the number 1 ranked class, I made a joke on Twitter that it's the worst recruited number 1 ranked class in the 40-year history of these hallowed recruiting rankings.
What I found interesting about the one that got away yesterday, or here in the last 2 days, the linebacker out of Louisiana that chose USC, was here you've got a top 5 linebacker in the country out of Louisiana. And he chooses USC, which is now a Big Ten counterpart to Ohio State. And his other third selection right there was Wisconsin, which kind of hit me kind of odd that those 3 schools would be in the mix for a top 5 linebacker in the state of Louisiana with no SEC teams on the radar. So that was kind of intriguing.
Yeah, Wisconsin's a great linebacker school as long as offensive line as well. They've put a lot of good defensive linemen and linebackers into the NFL, no question. And I think they've got a linebacker, Herdig, up there, who's going to be one of the best in the country this season. So, yeah, All indications on Tackett Curtis was it was Ohio State, and a couple of the guys in our network at 24/7 had even crystal balled him to Ohio State. But in the last 48 hours before he made that verbal commitment to USC, something obviously changed. I don't know if it was name, image, and likeness remuneration related or what it was, but Lincoln Riley was able to pull a flip on Ohio State there, and really not necessarily a flip because he'd never committed publicly to Ohio State, although everybody who's in the know on these things was led to believe it was going to be Ohio State, and then it turned out it wasn't. So, and I thought Lane Kiffin had a really neat comment this week at the SEC Media Days. You've legalized cheating, so now don't be surprised when all the top prospects end up with the people who have the most money. So, again, I can't say whether USC bought this kid or not, and perhaps that had nothing to do with it. Ohio State has gone to essentially what's a 4-2-5 defense with Jim Knowles, who's the defensive coordinator and the linebackers coach, and tells you, on face that they're only going to play 2 linebackers probably 50 to 70% of the time. That's going to be their base. They will play 3 linebackers against some opponents and in some down and distance sets or whatever, perhaps score and time or whatever dictates when they're going to change personnel and go to 4-3. But they have 9 or 10 scholarship linebackers for 2 starters, and they just took 2 national top 50 guys at that position this past year with C.J. Hicks and Gabe Powers. So you look at it on the surface and you say, well, you need linebackers in every class, at least 1 or 2. And Ohio State, believe me, back to Raekwon McMillan or Jerome Baker, hasn't had a difference maker per se at the linebacker position. They're all American. Let's just use that litmus test in some regard or another. So you need the best players you can get your hands on, no doubt about it. And it was sad to see Troy Bowles, also the son of Todd Bowles, the coach of Tampa Bay. He picked Georgia. So there's 2 blue chip linebackers, Bowles and Curtis, that went by the boards for the Buckeyes, and a running back as well. Justice Haynes picked Alabama here this week as well instead of Ohio State. So, but again, Ohio State's got Travion Henderson as an indentured servant through 2023. So aren't going to be a lot of carries for a 2023 freshman coming in like Justice Haynes next year. So maybe that's what he was looking at. But at any rate, some guys that were very highly ranked, heavily recruited, would have fit in really good in a number 1 ranked Ohio State recruiting class, decided to go elsewhere. And that's cause for great concern there on the banks of the Olentangy, as Keith Jackson used to say.
Folks, we talk Buckeyes with all of you each and every Wednesday here at the Voice of College Football. Steve gives of his time each and every week, typically Tony and Kevin. We hope you appreciate their contribution. Steve's here for the full hour, plus, as you can imagine, with schedules and everything that needs to be worked out, devotes more than an hour per week to us here. So please understand that. We've got the Super Chat available to you. And please like the video and share the videos out on social media, because not everyone knows that we're here talking Ohio State football by extension every day here on the channel, but this specific show each and every Wednesday. Web security has been in the Winsipedia here, not just right with this comment, but in recent days here, Steve. So let's see what we got here. Ohio State's all-time record, first, all-time wins, tied for second. All-time national championships, which we can dispute all day. 6th.
6 is the right number.
4th all-time bowl games. 5th winning percentage in bowl games. 48th. Yes, there have been some downers in past decades. Heisman Trophy winners. Of course, there's a big tie for 7 at 7. NFL draft selections 3rd, and the first round selections are number 1. Correct, Steve?
Yes. They caught up to USC and passed them here about a year or 2 ago. They're in the high 90s right now in terms of all-time first-round draft picks. I always have to look it up every year. And they had 2 guys, obviously, that were taken in the first round this past year with the wide receivers. So, and they'll have at least 2 more taken next year when you think about C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and maybe even a 3rd with Paris Johnson, who could be top 20 offensive linemen. So, they're not giving up that mantle anytime soon on the first-round draft picks. And really, Mark, the last really from about 94 on with John Cooper, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day, these last 4 head coaches, and Luke Fickell the 1 year. This has been the era where all of those numbers have really perked up. I mean, they were probably 5 to 10 spots back on all of those indicators prior to the last almost 30 years. So, well, no, what would that be? Yeah, almost 30 years. So back to 92, 94, that range. So when Coop really got it rolling. Um, so they've made up a ton of ground in all those important categories. And really, I mean, they were a top 5-10 football program prior to that, based on what Woody had done and Paul Brown, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even a little bit into the 70s. But it really has shot up, and now they are at or near the top of every metric that you want to measure for a college football program based on the last 25 years, 30 years, and there's no relenting in sight. I mean, when you're talking about a team that's picked number 2 in the preseason and behind Alabama, and has really good odds to make the playoff and win the Big Ten. Almost, I'm doing a media poll of all 14 of our Big Ten sites, and they all picked Ohio State to win the East. They all picked Ohio State to beat whoever comes out of the West to win the Big Ten. It would be the 5th Big Ten in 6 years for the Buckeyes. And so, there's no the light's not at the end of the tunnel for anybody else in the Big Ten right now. It's Ohio State, the big one, and the other 13 right now, it seems like, last year, of course, notwithstanding.
While we're on the subject, before we move on and get back down to just the Ohio State football team and what's going on and will be going on over the next 5 weeks leading into Notre Dame, there was a comment made on the SEC network. And we're in day 3 of the SEC Media Days. I keep close watch on that. It's tremendous coverage in addition to what the coaches and players say. Tremendous coverage. I have varying levels of respect for the commentators, but truly, for the most part, high levels of respect. But a comment made yesterday in the discussion about Heisman Trophy candidates, and when C.J. Stroud was brought up, the comment was made that he's going to have these eye-popping numbers, but who does Ohio State play? Their schedule's a joke. And I'm quoting. I'm like, oh my! There were 5 or 6 comments made, maybe not to that degree of being ludicrous, but some ridiculous comments, because I think these people just are in an SEC silo and they have really little knowledge of what's going on outside of that conference. And then, when Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa don't get your attention on a schedule, that's a bit pathetic.
Yeah, I'm looking at my wrist because I'm staring at my watch. Like, how much time do we have here? I guess it depends how you want to come at this. The Phil Steele book right here, he proclaims himself to be the best prognosticator, preseason picker of the last 30 years or whatever since he's been doing this. And on his power poll, he has Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4. So, I mean, that's what everybody is saying. You put those 4 teams in a bowl and pick them out. Alabama typically 1, Ohio State typically 2, and then Georgia and Clemson round out the top 4 on just about everybody's list. Ohio State's schedule will include Michigan, who is number 5, Notre Dame, who is number 6. Granted, they'll play both of those teams at home. Then you scan on down, and they are going to play Wisconsin, also at home, at number 12. They are going to play Iowa at home, who is number 17. Maybe that's what he's talking about, just the joke that they're getting all those games at home, I guess. I don't know. But then they're going to play on the road at number 18, Penn State. They're going to play number 31, Michigan State as well. And then it kind of falls off after that. You have to kind of search down through there for the rest of them. But those 6 games are not a joke. And they could lose any of those 6 games. I don't know that they're going to lose to Iowa. That'd probably be the one that I because Iowa's just not going to generate enough offense. On a good day, they score 3 touchdowns, and Ohio State's going to score at least 4, even in a loss, as we saw to Oregon, as we saw to Michigan. When they lose, they're still going to score 4 touchdowns. So, I don't know how you would call it a joke. I mean, they are going to play Toledo, who's the MAC pick to win the MAC, I guess. But they always play a MAC teams, theoretically, just as Alabama, the flag bearer for his league, is going to play Austin Peay, an FCS school. So, it all comes out in the wash. I mean, Alabama, their schedule, they're going to play at Texas, who's projected top 25, I think, by a lot of people. At Arkansas, who's projected top 40. Texas A&M, who's top 10. At Tennessee, who some people think could crack the top 25 this year. I guess we'll have to take a wait and see on that. Mississippi State is kind of I don't know what you think about them. I think they can be a top 30, top 40 team. I don't know that they play so many tough opponents. You got to win 9 games, really, to be a top 25 team, or eight games. I don't think they will. LSU doesn't seem like they're going to be a top 25 team, although that game's on the road. Mississippi, they're projected top 15. That's on the road. And then Auburn, they fell off the map last year. Are they going to be able to put a football team on the field? They play them at home. So I think those 2 schedules are very comparable. And to call one a joke and to hold the other one up, and Georgia, I don't think Georgia's schedule is even as good as Alabama's, as you look at it. So, we're comparing apples to apples, or apples to oranges, because, these 2 teams are in the SEC. Ohio State's in the Big Ten, and there's not a lot of crossover. Like Penn State's going to play Auburn. That may be the only time. Is that the only crossover or non-conference game with Big Ten and SEC? That might be it.
Yes, I believe so.
It's at Auburn. Now, Penn State could go down there and lose that game. I mean,
Sure.
It's such a tough place to play. It's going to be a 3:30 game. It's not a night game. So, we'll see. Georgia is playing Oregon and Alabama. Oregon's projected top 10, so that's a good game. At South Carolina, that's a rivalry game. Don't they think maybe top 40 for South Carolina this year? Maybe 7 wins, 8 wins, maybe. And that's like the high water mark. Auburn, we kind of already discussed. They play them at home. They should beat them at home. I mean, no question. Florida and Jacksonville, rivalry game, could go either way, but Florida's not on their level. And, not there yet. Tennessee at home. Tennessee's coming up, but it's in Georgia. At Mississippi State, at Kentucky. Could get dicey. Georgia Tech. I mean, their schedule's nowhere near as good as Ohio State's schedule. No. Nowhere near. Not even close. And he's calling Ohio State's schedule a joke, and yet this team, now they're going to get the benefit of playing Alabama in the championship game. I've already made my picks for the season. I went Ohio State 1, Alabama 2, Clemson 3, and then Georgia 4, just because I think Georgia could be undefeated going into the Alabama game, but I think Alabama's got the better team. I think Georgia just lost so much. I mean, they only have 3 starters coming back on defense. The strength of their team were those floppy belly, 320-pound defensive tackles, up front that push the line of scrimmage into the backfield.
They sure did.
One of their best games last year was Arkansas had risen to number 8 in the country. And they just obliterated them 37-0. I mean, it was like awe-inspiring watching. Here's Arkansas thought they arrived and thought they were going to go into Georgia and upset the Bulldogs, and that got ugly. So, and they made a lot of teams look bad last year. So, but I think Alabama's got a little better team than Georgia this year. And Bennett is the quarterback. He's not looking over his shoulder anymore, and is he a difference maker type guy at quarterback? I don't know, but no way. Joe Tess, look in the mirror, bro. Your 2 standard bearer programs. I think the teams in your league that have to play Alabama and Georgia, their schedules are tougher than Alabama and Georgia, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the way it works that way. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll get to some comments and questions.
So that handles Joe Tessitore, who I love. Joe Tessitore.
I do.
He and
But
Rod
come
Gilmore
on.
doing them Friday night, 50-44 games back, 8-10 years ago. That got him on the map. He was like, okay, Rod Gilmore, been good to know you. And he was off to do Monday Night Football for a year or
Yeah,
two, and
a couple of years.
now they've kind of calmed him down a little bit. Who does Monday night now?
Oh boy, didn't they
Is
move?
it Levy? Is it now Steve
Well,
Levy?
yeah, it was Levy, Greasy, and
Boog?
oh no. They
No,
demoted
no, 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 no,
Boog. They took him off as well. It's oh shoot. Used to play with the Browns. Played for the Browns. Played at Pitt. Oh my goodness. I can't remember his name. I'm sure somebody in the chat can pick us up. Louis Riddick.
Okay, yeah.
Louis Riddick was the third guy in the booth with Levy and Greasy.
I like Tessitore as an announcer. I think he just
Oh, I
brings the
think he's really good.
drama to it and does a great job. This is just a lot of people on the Big Ten into this, said he was basically told what to say and said it, and what can you do? He's going to bat for the home team, and it doesn't sound like ESPN may even have a piece of the Big Ten going forward, which is a sad day. The Big Ten's been on ESPN since they signed on in the 90s. Particularly, it started with basketball, and then they got on with football probably around 93, 94 with some games on ESPN when they finally got the ability to show – you could show all the games, every week as opposed to just 3 or 4 a season. ESPN picked up an inventory and has had it on Big Ten since then, and particularly with basketball. They were doing basketball in the Big Ten back to the late 80s, I think. So, whatever.
I think even before then. I remember those Troy Taylor, Ronnie Stokes teams playing some ESPN games.
Yep.
And, I think the first handful of Ohio State games I can remember on ESPN were actually on tape delay. I think the game out at Stanford against John Elway and one of the Florida State games. And I still remember watching the World Series in '82 and Howard Cosell, actually, because the game was only on the radio. I couldn't watch it, so I wasn't. I was watching the World Series game, the game that they lost to Wisconsin, like in '81. Well, that was a big shocker because Wisconsin had been horrible forever.
Yeah.
That was mentioned as well. Just to put a capper on Monday Night Football, of course, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are going to be doing the Monday night games on ESPN this season.
They finally solved that problem. I wonder why Joe Buck wasn't on the All-Star game last night. I'm completely out of touch on who works for who and who does what now. And I'm a big Gus Johnson apologist. I don't think Fox does nearly enough with him. And as I've said any number of times, I think he's good on college football. Like, we will see him doing the Ohio State-Michigan game for what would this be? Maybe the 6th year in a row or something this year, along with, Joel Klatt, I guess, is his color guy. They do a really bang-up job. I would like to see them lease him out to CBS for the NCAA tournament, because that's where he really flourishes. And he does do some college basketball for Fox now, and maybe some with Fox Sports 1. We don't see him on Big Ten Network. We used to for a little bit, but too big for that, I guess. So I don't know. To me, that's his calling. Those things are his calling, and that's where he ought to be. But whatever.
All right, Steve. Now we're moving on to Big Ten Media Days. And again, we'll take your comments and questions there in the live chat with Ronnie Hickman, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and CJ Stroud headed to Indianapolis along with Ryan Day.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions that they'd like us to ask any of these people, go ahead and post them now, and Mark can share them on here. But again, it's Ryan Day, the head coach, CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Ronnie Hickman. And, I think at face value, we accept that Ohio State had the best offense in college football last year. Sputtered in a couple of the games that they lost. Obviously, Oregon and Michigan, they didn't establish the run very well in those games. Stroud threw for 1,000,000 yards in defeat in both those games. I guess we feel like the offense is going to be very good again this year, and there may be some questions there. I would start with Hickman in the defense, and some of the questions I would like to ask him, and again, he can't tell you who's going to start and who's going to play and all these kind of things. It's really not the player's position to opine about, I think Court Williams should start at safety instead of Josh Proctor and all these other things. But just this new scheme and how spring football went, what they've done to acclimate themselves with the new scheme during the offseason. Is the new scheme built for them to beat Purdue, who throws it all over the lot? And is it also built to beat Michigan, who lined up and with two tight ends and ran the ball right down their throat in the snowstorm up there? Is it built to do both? Because if you want to win the national championship, you got to be able to defend both. And Georgia may show you one thing, Clemson may show you one thing, and then Alabama may show you something else if you get into the Final Four. And if it's not one of those three teams, it's somebody who's as good or better, obviously based on the season, whether it's another game with Notre Dame or another game with Michigan or Texas A&M or whoever bleeds in there somehow, from that. We're just looking at that preseason list of the other top schools. So to me, that would be a feeling that I would want to get from Ronnie Hickman is your thought about this defense, because last year, and you try and be nice when you're talking to people, but let's be real, between you and I and the fence post, it was so bad at times. And even the year before, it was cringeworthy bad at times that it needs a wholesale revamping. And a lot of the same names are going to play on defense. I mean, it's still Tommy Eichenberg, it's still Steele Chambers, Zach Harrison, Ronnie Hickman. The two corners are going to be the same, Cameron Brown and Denzel Burke. But does that extra year of experience, and with new coaches giving them new perspectives, Iliano and Tim Walton doing the corners and Jim Knowles with the linebackers, does that change the perspectives? Does that change the results? So I think that'd be storylines that I would pursue with Ronnie Hickman. Which of the young defensive players has really caught his eye this summer? Who's really working their way into playing a lot? I think those are questions that are natural for him, and he's going to have to do a lot of discussion about the quality of the defense. I think in his 1 hour, he's going to be asked about 10 different times why it wasn't any good last year and why they expect it to be better. So he should brush up on his answers to those two questions in particular, because he's going to get them. What will happen is somebody will happen over there for 10 minutes, then they'll walk away, and somebody else will walk over and ask the same question. Invariably, that's what happens in an hour-long session. For C.J. Stroud, I think you want to kind of get to his motivation and what is it that really pushes him. And he's always said the right things, and his play was almost uncanny at times last year with what he accomplished. And now you just question, does he rest on his laurels from last year and the records he set, or does he want to go back out there and get deep into some of these football games and throw a fifth, a sixth, the seventh touchdown pass? And what does that mean to him? And what, just what's driving him right now to be the best player he can be? And so I think, to me, that's probably get under the hood with him a little bit about what's really driving him. And people are like, do you want to win the Heisman? And ask all these silly questions. Well, that's completely out of his control. It depends on the other 10 guys he's playing with, the plays that are called, the opponent, and what other people are doing. I've read some people were talking about the new quarterback at Oklahoma is going to put up, millions of yards, and he's going to win the Heisman. Stanford Steve, the guy who's the information guy for Van Pelt, Scott Van Pelt at ESPN, said his dark horse Heisman guy is the new quarterback at Oklahoma. Never heard of him. Whatever. Okay, if you say so.
From UCF.
Yeah, guy comes from UCF, so he's going to throw for 1 million yards in the hapless Big 12, and he's going to steal the Heisman Trophy. So, that's completely out of C.J. Stroud's control. I think there are a lot of people that look at the lay of the land and say, okay, Bryce Young won it last year. He was on arguably the best team in the regular season. And yet, C.J. Stroud, off what he did in the Rose Bowl, if he can do anything like that in several of his games this year, is going to put up just humongous numbers, 4,000 or 5,000 yards, whatever, and just obscene type numbers. So, what's out there, what's pushing him. And I'm not a person that likes to go up to somebody in the preseason and ask them, are you going to win the Heisman Trophy? Just because that's 4 months until it's awarded, and 13 football games, and so many ups and downs. He could get knocked out of a game. He may miss a game. He missed a game last year. It was Akron, so they took an opportunity for him to have a week off and kind of regroup a little bit and get it going back the right direction after a couple of uneasy performances early. So that was the best thing that ever happened to him, because he came back and was just on fire from that moment on. So that's kind of what I would look at with him. Same thing with Smith-Njigba. What do you do? We saw what you did in the Rose Bowl, granted against, what was it, a couple guys that had moved over from offense to try and help the Utah defense. What is it that you do to kind of build and grow off what you were doing at the end of last season? You don't have Wilson and Olave to play off of. There'll be schools that, unlike Utah, will have two pretty good corners who can lock you down, and if there's nobody else that they need to worry about. And how are you going to overcome that? So to me, what has he done, and what's he going to do to take his game to another level, to where he is regarded as a top 10 NFL draft pick like those guys were when they left. So again, I would say with him, since he works so closely with the young wide receivers, who is he liking out of that group? Because it can't just be him. It's got to be Harrison. It's got to be Emeka Ibuka. It's got to be Julian Fleming. Maybe Cameron Babb is back healthy. And then those young guys, Kyon Grays, he was outstanding in the spring. Jared Burton was also outstanding in the spring, and a couple more guys coming in. So I want to see who's going to be in the top 5, who's in the top 3, and, what's that looking at. Then for Ryan Day, I'm open to whatever anybody, thinks we should ask Ryan Day, but I would say, how comfortable are you with Jim Knowles and what you saw in the spring with the defense? And Ryan Day has basically said it. And as a head coach, he probably should never have said this, but he, without saying it in manner of terms, did say, I want to just be the head coach of the offense, and I shouldn't have to walk down there and figure out what's going on with the defense. That's why I pay somebody to run the defense for me. And, I'm not a big fan of that. He's the Ohio State head football coach, so it's all part of his purview, but I get where he's coming from. He said, for this thing to be going good when we're rolling, I need to be doing this, and they need to be doing that. And that's getting stops, and didn't happen the last couple of years. So amazing what happens when you lose Chase Young and Jeffrey Okudah, the stops you don't get without blue chip players. But I think that was part and parcel of it.
That's Steve Hillwagon here from Bucknuts, breaking down the Buckeyes as we do each and every week here at the Voice of College Football for 168 consecutive weeks. Appreciate everybody being here. And yes, Big Ten Media Days next week. Steve will be there. I've asked for your questions, so we'll get a few here. And like you, Steve, I think it's ridiculous, and I noted that a couple times in the last few days watching the SEC Media Days when players, Bryce Young in particular, asked whether they're going to win the Heisman Trophy, like they have control over it. Like, are you gonna throw 40 touchdowns this year? Well, at least they have more control over that, but they don't even have complete control over that, of course. But to say, are you going to win the Heisman Trophy? I don't even like, and that's what I'm here for, but I don't even like people asking me who's going to win the Heisman Trophy, because I said, my response is, you're asking me to predict what other people are going to vote on.
Yeah,
you're asking.
I liked what Stanford Steve had to say. Like, he came up with, okay, and when he makes that point of this guy is going to be put in a position to really flourish, okay, I mean, that's great. You're having somebody who's coming from way off the pack that could have that type of year. I think he's put some thought into it. That's good. I again, it's you're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, it's such a pie in the sky thing, and it just takes so much luck to get through a 13 game season unscathed, and to get there. Um, uh, who did Alabama lose to? Did they lose in the regular season? They
Alabama lost to Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, yeah. It's kind of rare to overcome a loss, even a lot of times, to still be there. Although unbeaten teams, there aren't that many of them. I don't know. I mean, I look at it. These kids have so much going on. I mean, I guess it's valid to ask him. There's only been one 2-time winner of this thing in the history of it. What would that mean? If you were selected as the second all-time 2-time winner of this thing, what would that mean? To you? I think that's kind of. I mean, that puts somebody in rarefied air when only one other person in the history of the sport's done it. And you think about Tim Tebow. I think he won it as a sophomore and didn't win it again. And other guys have won it as juniors and maybe even as sophomores and didn't get a chance to win it again. I presume this is Bryce Young's last year at Alabama. Did he redshirt the year before, or only played a little bit, or?
Yeah, he redshirted in, what was that, 2019?
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is his contract year, so to speak. So if he's going to be a repeat Heisman Trophy winner, he needs to do it this year. So that'd be the one angle I would take on it. Just what would that mean? But, to speculate about it much beyond that is pointless, because there are so many variables and, hundreds and hundreds of games that are going to be played that are going to determine that. So it's like, and you need a ton of luck to stay healthy and a ton of luck with other guys to step up and play great football for you, catch passes for you, pass protect for you, run the football for you, get stops for your defense for you to get the ball back, and et cetera, and so on. That, I mean, some people don't even consider is if you play on a team with a great defense, you're getting the ball at midfield a lot of times. You're not having to drive an 80-yard field to go score some of these touchdowns. You will score more touchdowns when you take over on the plus 40 than you do on the minus 20. So it's a proven fact, I believe, that is a case.
Well, Steve, before we leave this topic about the Heisman Trophy, you're going to love this one. Now, I try to extend a little grace at times, because I understand that I'm on here 30, 40 hours, whatever it is a week talking, and you often say things you don't mean, or you misspeak, or in the moment you forget things. And there, people will bring mistakes to my attention and say, Mark, you said this. And I'll be like, oh, well, I'll, hit myself upside the head and be like, I know like that, like the back of my hand. It just in the moment I forgot about so-and-so or whatever. But you sparked my memory when you mentioned Archie Griffin, because it was stated to Bryce Young by one of the SEC network commentators. It was Jordan Rogers. Wouldn't that be something to be the first 2-time Heisman Trophy winner? And I just went, oh my goodness. Now that's either somebody just forgetting in the moment, which that's fine. We all make mistakes, but that's when I question, okay, is that a lack of knowledge, or is that somebody just forgetting for a split second? I hope it's the latter.
Yeah, I don't know what people are thinking. It's all documented. You can go look it up. I get confused on the Vince Young and Vince Young never won it, did he?
Oh, he did.
He did win the national championship. It went to Reggie Bush maybe that year, and Leinart the year before, or vice versa or something. Yeah, but Vince Young was one of the great players in the history of the sport that never won the Heisman Trophy, which is kind of weird. I guess in a sense, if you take Bush off of it, maybe he was the runner-up that year, and
he probably was.
Yeah,
Deshaun Watson never won the Heisman, and I think he won one.
Good old Deshaun Watson. Not to get off on a rant here, but as a longtime Browns fan, I am a little bit conflicted on him, and
Sure.
Not to go down that rabbit hole. Just I don't know. Do we really need to win at all costs? I don't know.
Yeah, and you hate to judge somebody off
Allegations.
allegations, but at the same time, when they're mounting at how many at this point, you kind of tend to wonder, the legitimacy of the allegations seem to be fairly strong. But again, innocent until proven guilty. And then the irony, I don't need to remind you, Steve, that Baker Mayfield's going to be receiving a check from the Browns while he's possibly beating them in week 1, playing for the Panthers.
Well, the whole Baker Mayfield thing was conflicted from the start because a lot of my family who, are Ohio State people are like, oh, he planted the flag at Ohio State. How could you root for him for the Browns? I said, because he's wearing the Browns uniform. If Donovan Peoples-Jones was a Michigan guy and now he stars for the Browns, which I thought he was a steal in the 6th round or 7th round whenever we got him, just because I know he was a freak athlete. Now that he's wearing the brown and the orange, I could care less if he played for the University of Mars. I mean, it's like Otis Sistrunk. I mean, he's a Brown now, so he's on my team, and I really don't care. But that was kind of my feeling with Mayfield. I was always a Mayfield backer, even last year. I held him accountable for not playing well, but understanding he was hurt. Understanding why didn't they pull him if he was hurt, understanding he didn't want to be pulled because he was hurt, because he knew he had to play well to get his contract, and et cetera, so on. I saw all sides of this, and now people have taken to bashing him now that he's gone and saying, oh, he wasn't a good teammate and this, that, and the other dumb bull crap. And I'm like, what's the point of this? It's pointless. We see this all the time. Well, now that they're gone, let's be sure to bash them. And they were the problem all along. You didn't say this when they were starting last year. You didn't say any of this stuff. And now, he was public enemy number 1 in retrospect. I'm like, give me a break. You're just trying to curry favor with the Browns fans at this point to dump on the guy who's left. So, whatever.
So as we head toward Big Ten Media Days, some of the questions coming in here, one has to deal, a number of them deal with the defense. Whether Jim Knowles is, I'll kind of clump them all together because there's quite a few about the defense. Whether Jim Knowles is going to opt to play more 4-3, at what point in the season, Steve, are you going to have a decent read on the defense? That was asked as well. So we'll put those out there for you.
Yeah, those are really good questions, and I think there has been a bit of a misnomer that Jim Knowles has said that this is strictly a 4-2-5 defense. We saw them line up with 3 linebackers at times in the spring, and I don't know what will precipitate that. I think that's something that people will be watching closely to see. Oh, when this happened, they went to the 4-3, and maybe when you play Wisconsin, who wants to line up and run their running back Braylon Allen at you, or Michigan wants to run Blake Corum at you, or those type teams are going to line up and try and overpower you up front, then maybe that's when you pull the 3rd safety and put the 3rd linebacker in. Again, we don't get to watch enough practice to know how much it's practiced, if it's only 20% of the time, or is it really 40% of the time? So until we get into the season and you start charting snaps and you see who's playing, how many snaps and this kind of thing, and they were in this alignment. And the other thing is, you may have 3 safeties on the field, but they may mix and match and play different responsibilities. Like, some of them may be in the nickel safety position. Some of them may be in the free safety, the strong safety, whatever their names are, the adjuster, the bandit, whatever they're calling these guys. So you kind of have to look at that game within the game sometimes to understand. And it will take, I don't think you'll glean much of anything from Arkansas State and Toledo. They're just going to out personnel those people. But I do believe you will get something certainly out of Notre Dame, watching them play Notre Dame. And then as I flip open the schedule, I think Wisconsin is week 4. That's an important game. And then week 6 is at Michigan State. So you have 3 top 20 teams, give or take, in your first 6 games. And I do believe Wisconsin, with who they have to play, which is Illinois State, which is an FCS school, Washington State, which is just kind of middle of the road Pac-12, and it's at Madison. And New Mexico State, which is one of the worst programs in FBS, they're going to be 3-0 and ranked number 8 in the country when they come to Ohio State, because they're going to start like 15 or 16, and then as the teams in front of them lose, even not playing anybody, they're going to move up. So, and I think ABC will take that game for a night game. I would think on September the 24th, it's probably the best game they have the rights to on that day. If it's number 2 Ohio State, number 8 Wisconsin, it's pretty much a no-brainer. So, provided Ohio State beats Notre Dame. So, you're going to find out, I think, with those 3 games, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and Michigan State, they'll play 6 games and then go into a bye week. And then that week of October the 15th, when they have the open week, they'll get under the hood, pull out the chassis, pull out the alternator, pull out the spark plugs, and really kind of, figure out in there what fits and what doesn't, do a deep dive and say, okay, when we did this, we tried this and it worked. When we did this, we tried this and it didn't work. And, I believe their defense will be better. As I continue to bring this up all the time, they gave up 22.8 points per game last year. In 2020, it was kind of skewed because of the COVID year. They gave up 35 to Indiana, and then 52 to Alabama, which were kind of unheard of. It was skewed a little bit. They actually gave up in that 8-game season, they gave up almost 26 points a game. So that's not Ohio State football. Back in 2018, they gave up 25.5 points per game. So 3 of the last 4 years, they've been over 20 points a game, which is just very uncharacteristic for Ohio State. And the year in 2019, when they lost to Clemson in the playoff, they were only giving up just shy of 14 points a game. So a touchdown a game makes a tremendous difference. And I know, it evens out over a 12, 14 game season. It really only matters when you're playing Michigan, Notre Dame, Clemson, Alabama, etc. It's how good your defense is, as opposed to, did you give up a glory touchdown against Purdue or, somebody goofy like that? But, it's a consistency thing to me, that they've not been very consistent on defense really other than that 2019 season. Over the last 4 years, they've really kind of struggled. So to me, that is what I think about with Jim Knowles and the defense, is it has to be better. It can't be any worse. And everybody's got an extra year. You're bringing in 2 studs at defensive end in their sophomore year, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. Both the Bosa brothers were All-Americans as sophomores. This is the time. This is the place. This is the team that needs it. If one of those guys can get 10 sacks and one of them can get 7 or 8, boy, that changes the outlook in a hurry.
Yeah, you look at the talented defensive end, and I've said it a number of times, and it's no great revelation. If they all come together and play near their potential, it could be just a devastating pass rush. It should be a devastating pass rush. It just should be, based on how they've recruited at that position. All right. Steve Buckholtz wants you to ask about Sonny Styles. He's interested in Sonny Styles' development.
Yeah, Sonny obviously should be a senior in high school at Pickerington Central, but he is fully developed. This roster here, let me see if I can find it. I thought I had it. I don't know what he is. 6'4", 215. I was on our radio show this morning with Dave Biddle, and I made the comment, when you don't get the 2 linebackers who they didn't sign this past week, you're okay with that because they got Powers and they got Hicks. So I think Styles is going to compute as a linebacker before it's all said and done, because 6'4", 215, get him in the right weight system and the right nutrition and everything else. And I'm not saying anything about his training. I'm sure he trained like a crazy man at Pickerington, and I'm sure his dad, Lorenzo, had him doing all the right things. I'm not saying he's coming in as a slob or anything stupid like that. He's chiseled. I mean, he's a specimen, but he could add 15 more pounds, and now he's 6'4", 6'5", 230. I don't think he's a safety. I think he's more of a linebacker at that point. And so we'll see what direction he takes. They're going to put him with the safety group to start out. They have so many safeties on this roster now. They're too deep at each of the three positions. I fully think the starters are going to be Hickman, Proctor, and Tanner McAllister, with Court Williams right there. I just kind of look off my cheat sheet here. Kai Stokes, the freshman, did really well in the spring. He could be in that mix. Jalen Johnson as well. They've got several guys. Cam Martinez is another guy. I mean, they are fully too deep at all 30 spots before you drop Sonny Styles into that mix. So they've got safeties, to burn. And does he see the field there? Do he or Hicks or Powers see the field at all on defense? I think other than in mop-up time, that's a huge question. So I guess if they get 5 or 6 games into this and the defense isn't playing up to capability, that's when the young guys, they turn to the young guys and say, get in there, take a series, and let's see what happens. And then they make a couple plays, and next thing you know, somebody has stolen a spot. So that's kind of the maturation process and the development process, how it goes. But he's only been on campus and in the weight room since June. Obviously did not enroll early because he was a junior in high school and then graduated early. So I think he looked at this as a free development year for him. Not saying he's going to redshirt per se, but I'd put him on special teams tomorrow, because at Pick Central, they had a game again on ESPN. He blocked a punt or two, as I recall. And, if for no other reason, put him on special teams and turn him loose on the punter and go get it. That'd be kind of my advice. So got a guy with a knack on getting his hand on the football, go do that. So, I suppose there's a good chance he'll get to play, and this will be his freshman year. And really, if he's always cracked up to be, he may only be there 3 years anyway. So, but we got to keep in mind he's only 17 years old too, even though he looks the part, like he's straight out of Central Casting as an NFL whatever. From a maturity standpoint, he's only 17 years old. So he's going to be practicing against 20 and 21-year-old men who are playing for keeps now. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. But, when he was a sophomore at Pick Central, he was playing right along the seniors then. So he's done it before. So I guess we'll see if he can do it again.
Yeah, like you, I'm not that wrapped up in the total metrics totals. If they give up 31 to Maryland instead of 17, but they win 52-31, I'm not going to be that concerned. Obviously, the considerations given to how well are they playing versus those teams, but the threat of loss isn't there. They gave up 31 to Purdue. I think the Purdue game was like 58-31 or 59-31, and that game was over at halftime. It was 31-7. The defense didn't give up anything when it counted. But the Tulsa game was alarming to be giving up drives when the game was on the line, and not to speak of course, Oregon and Michigan. We've got Kyler Wren, Miami Kane. Thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution there. So he's really hitching the wagon here between Jim Knowles and Ryan Day, and Ryan Day's success. And of course, Ohio State expecting championship aspirations, that Jim Knowles, if he doesn't get it done, then Ryan Day's going to be shown the door. That might be a bit extreme.
Yeah. I don't get that sense. Ohio State just re-upped on Ryan Day with a lucrative extension for, more years and much more money. And, I don't think that he'll be the head coach there as long as he wants to be, is kind of how I look at it. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. That's just somebody kind of trolling, I guess. And, I think that until Knowles delivers the goods, the jury is out. We just don't know. I mean, we think people pointed out his numbers when he took over at Oklahoma State, that there was actually a step back from the year before it was 2 steps forward the last few years. And obviously they got to the Big 12 championship game and lost, what was it, 21-16 or something to Baylor, and gave up 3 touchdowns, but couldn't score on the offensive side. I mean, with 3 touchdowns given up in a Big 12 championship game is usually enough to win the game, because you figure the winning team's going to score 40 a lot of times. So, I don't put that on him. And then obviously he left after that, and they gave up $1 million to Notre Dame. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Other than Ryan Day studied the situation and thought this was the best guy for the moment to come into Ohio State and take this challenge on and start over. Basically, take the whole whiteboard and, wipe it off and say, here you go. You got a blank slate, and you got good enough players to go win games. And we won 11 games last year, and we want to win 13, 14, 15 this year. So go to it. And that's the job. So Ryan Day says it all the time. At Ohio State, you can't lose. There's no such thing as losing a game at Ohio State. It's not a result that's acceptable. So if it does happen, you put your hard hat on, you get back up on the beam, and you go back to work. And that's all you can do.
We'll finish with this. Appreciate everybody being here. I think this is quite the legacy out of Willie here. His first game in the shoe, he had Woody at Paul Warfield, Ara Parsegan on the side of Northwestern, and Northwestern beat Ohio State. So I'm trying to think what year that would have been. That would have been sometime in the 50s.
He says 1962.
Oh, 62. There it is. Okay,
Yeah.
62, because that might have been right before Parsegan went to Notre Dame, because I think he won a national championship there in like 64 or 5. And then sat behind Woody's wife at the 45-yard line at some Rose Bowls there in the 70s.
Yeah, I was at the Rose Bowl this past year, and let me tell you, it's still the greatest spectacle, in college football is the Rose Bowl. Greatest place to watch a game. Some of the logistics getting in and out, not the greatest, and Los Angeles, not the favorite place of a lot of people right now, but once you're there and once you're in Pasadena, I'll tell you this, the week we were there, they talk about the sunny weather. We had more rain in 3 days there than we probably have in a year here in Columbus. It was awesome. It was awful, but finally the rain cleared out and the game was awesome. But I don't know. I vaguely recall some of those Rose Bowls with Archie. I was a young kid then, and obviously probably the first one that I truly remember was the Arch Leister one in 1979.
Yeah.
But have been fortunate to go to 3 Rose Bowl games. Ohio State won them all, or actually 4 now, because I was at Arizona State, Oregon, Washington, and now Utah. So there's 4, and also saw him play UCLA in the regular season there in 2001. We've referenced it, before on the show after 9/11. So I've been there 5 times, and I guess it's a great place to go watch a game. And what is its place going to be in the future of college football with a revamped playoff? And it's an uneasy, uncertain future, I think, for a lot of these traditions that we've had. But this is a sport that has scuttled rivalries like Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Pitt and West Virginia, and so many other ones over the years, just for the sake of money. And I guess we'll see what the next 20 years have to look forward to, with conference realignment and playoff expansion and the future of the postseason. All 3 of those things in a state of flux.
And once that first Big Ten schedule comes out, that includes USC and UCLA, we'll have much to talk about in envisioning all sorts of Big Ten teams, obviously making a regular stop out of the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. That should be pretty fascinating. Got a couple super chats to clean up before we take off here. Westish, should we be concerned if the defense does not perform outstanding in game 1? Can we make a judgment off the Notre Dame game? Well, before Steve jumps in, I'm going to say you can make a judgment. Not, of course, it's one team with one style of play, but it's a very good team. And even though they're not a dynamic, explosive offense. Ohio State's defense is going to have to deal with a top 5 to 10 offensive line in the country and a running game that should be serious. And Tyler Buckner's not, certainly he's going to possibly have his jitters on the big stage for the first time as a starting quarterback, but they've gotten his feet wet, similar to what we've seen with J.J. McCarthy at Michigan, playing meaningful series, meaningful snaps against big teams in big moments, but not just gun to gun being the starting quarterback, having packages in the offense designed for Tyler Buckner. But now the spotlight's on him. There's no more Jack Cohn. He's the guy. And so I think Notre Dame, while not maybe to the explosive degree of an Alabama or Ohio State, is certainly a formidable offense to have to see there in week 1.
Yeah, their offensive line is regarded as one of the best in the country, so we'll see how they do setting things up for Buckner being able to throw the football. Lost their 1,000-yard rusher, Kyron Williams. He's not back, but Chris Tyree, a sophomore, is taking over at running back. My Phil Steele tells me they have 7 starters back on offense with a new quarterback, obviously with Tyler Buckner, the sophomore, taking over. So, it seems like Buckner, is a run-pass type guy, a guy that can do a little bit of both. And to my way of thinking, this is very simple. Ohio State must stop the run. Got to get back to putting teams behind and down in distance. Too often people can run the football for 7 or 8 yards on first down. It's now freewheeling on second and short and third and short. You can do anything in your playbook in those 2 situations to convert the first down because the odds are with you. So got to get back to stacking up the run. And a lot of that goes back to the linebacker play that we touched on. The defensive tackle play has not been what it needed to be the last several years. And so I think that you can draw some parallels out of that game because I think Notre Dame, in some regards, will resemble some of the teams Ohio State might face in the Big Ten, like Michigan or like Wisconsin, who really fashioned themselves as being able to do both as opposed to being one-dimensional. So I think that you just want to see them play better football. If they can give up 17 to 20 points in that game, you got to like where they'll be because they ought to be able to score 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, even against a pretty good Notre Dame defense. A little bit of a state of flux there as well. Only 6 guys coming back on defense. Marcus Freeman, that's his area, the defense. So we'll see what he's got. Tommy Rees, the former quarterback there, is 3rd year as the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So he's really kind of getting his way he likes to do business. And really nothing changed with the coaching change. Nothing really changed with Rees still being there. And what I think about with Notre Dame, people are picking them in the top 10. And that's in spite of knowing they have to play Ohio State at the beginning and they have to play at USC at the end. And, there's some other, and Clemson as well, although that is a home game for them. I mean, that's 3 potential top 15 teams right there. 2 in the top 4 right there that they have to play, and people still think they're going to end up 10-2, give or take. I would rather play Notre Dame in week 1 than play them in week 12 when they've got their offense completely figured out and are now, a little bit more explosive and able to lean their whatever it is, lean their whatever on whatever and know that they can depend on certain ways to beat people. I think there's a lot of uncertainty for them, and Ohio State's got to play off that uncertainty and slam that door on them in the first game.
Although, of course, Jim Knowles and company have to unveil a new defense and have no live bullets to come their way to test it against a a MAC school, for example, before they get the full go against Notre Dame. So
they play a pretty good offense every day in practice, so I think
they do, from what I hear.
Yeah, there were some practices you could tell in the spring. Jim Knowles was a little exasperated with his guys. Just we gave up what? What did we just do? We gave up a 40-yard touchdown pass. How? What? It's like people are coming to the sideline and they're like, hey, man, what was I supposed to do there? So
yeah, this number 11 is pretty good. Or
exactly, 7-11. Put your money on 7-11.
World-class athlete. Appreciate your contribution, sir or ma'am. Does the recruitment of two great tight ends, signal that Ryan Day may be changing up his play calling to feature more tight end play?
That's interesting. They've had some years where they could have benefited from more production out of the tight end. I don't think necessarily last year was that type of year. I'd have to flip back on Ruckert. He was drafted into the NFL last year. He caught 26 passes and 3 touchdowns. They didn't even really – there were a lot of games you didn't even know he was on the field, I think. So, but you still move the chains and you still put up a lot of yards and a lot of points. I just think that the tight end is almost a security blanket, it seems like, for the Ohio State quarterbacks into this regime, where if all else fails, then that's when we'll look to Ruckert, or they won't suspect it now. After not throwing there for the last 8 quarters, we're going to throw down the seam for 30 yards to the tight end. It's kind of like they spring it on people as a surprise as much as anything. So, Ruckert did have 2 touchdowns, I want to say, against Clemson in the playoff game in New Orleans, which were huge. And G. Scott has got that ability, I think, as a pass-catching tight end. I think Cade Stover, if he can hang on to the football, can be that kind of guy. And they're talking a lot of great things about Joe Royer as well, who might be a redshirt freshman or third-year sophomore. Let's see what it says here. Sophomore is what he's listed at here. Those 3 guys are going to get to play a lot, and the proof will be in the pudding whether Stroud dumps it down to them or not. But when he's been given time, he's kind of like, well, why would I throw it to a guy for a 10-yard gain when I'm got all kinds of time and I can throw it to Garrett Wilson for 30, So, it evens out. You don't want to take chances either. As long as you're moving the sticks, sustaining drives, scoring touchdowns, that's all that matters. And Stroud has proven to be a master of that. So I think some of it's the quarterback's biases. I don't think Fields, under penalty of death, would throw to the tight end a lot of times, it seemed like. So they didn't get much out of Ruckert last year. I'll just say that. 13 games, 26 catches. That's 2 a game. That's just another guy on the field.
Yeah, and we'll see what he turns out to be as an NFL player, because he certainly, as you mentioned, against Clemson, and that even though it wasn't for a touchdown, that one-handed catch down the seam against Alabama early in the game that set up their first score was pretty impressive. So, yeah, the guy can definitely play. They've certainly had NFL caliber tight ends come through the program under Meyer and Day, despite their lack of productivity. All right, catch Steve's work at Bucknuts 247 Sports. Steve, is there anywhere else we need to find you?
Just at Twitter, you see my handle there at Steve Hellwagon, and covering all the stuff, the run up to this season. We've had some interesting content on our site. I took all of the Big Ten games, conference and non-conference, and wrote a sentence or 2 about every game for all 14 teams, and published that to kind of give people an idea of what's out there, and maybe some of the scheduling implications in terms of the TV start times and why certain things could be slotted a certain way as they get deep into the season. And people ask me, my best guess, and you from the television industry, Mark, you can probably attest to this, that the unpredictability of what the programmers at these networks are going to do is greater now than it's probably ever been at any time that I can recall. And we finally got a little bit of light shed on the process that Fox and ABC sit down with the composite schedule of the 13 weeks. So they kind of take week 0, the game with Northwestern and Nebraska, and kind of look at that as a one-off. And, I presume whatever week it came out of, it got selected as part of that process. And then, Fox decided we're going to shoot that game from Ireland or whatever. So kind of discount that week 0 game before in late August. But the other 13 weeks, it looks like Fox gets the first pick of which weekend they want to have the first pick of the games. And invariably, that's always week 13. Ohio State, Michigan is number one pick. Well, that gave ABC the second pick of the weekends, and they went with the Notre Dame Ohio State game. Then Fox came back, which is very rare, with the third pick. They got the Ohio State Penn State game, and it just happens to be on a day when they have the World Series at night. So it almost automatically makes it a big noon game for them on that day. And then it shifts back over. ABC took Ohio State, Wisconsin. And I just kind of plotted out. I mean, those were obvious as the nose on your face. I think number 5 was probably Fox taking Penn State and Michigan, who play each other early in the season. And it just kind of, you can look at the games in each weekend and say, oh, yeah, that was the weekend that went after this one and then this one, and it was obvious for this. And you can make some educated guesses. But now that we know who's got the first pick in a given weekend, there are some weeks where you just look at it and say, I have no idea what they're going to do here. I mean, just none. And then you may make a guess on what you think they're going to do. And everything you thought that was going to be at noon on one network is on 3:30 on the other network. It doesn't make any sense, but they have their reasons. And one of the things I wanted to write about was what schools out there, like you did the thing with Sports Media Watch, tracking the audiences. I think that data over a 5 or 10 year period is incumbent upon any future realignment or expansion. Which schools drive an audience that a network will actually pay you money to give you a net gain for the 14, 16, 18 schools if you add them. Notre Dame is certainly value added if you take them. We know that. But, is North Carolina, is Stanford, is California, is Virginia, who else is out there in new frontiers, Washington, Oregon, those are probably the 6. I mean, in Notre Dame that kind of stick out there that you say they've got to be an entity. They've got to have an audience to be able to draw realignment or expansion talks. So that was a story that I wrote, just looking at the whole schedule. Did one with my own top 25 and my own Big Ten top down. And I will be honest, I sold on Iowa. I don't know why, just didn't like the way that their schedule set up, Mark. And if I got just a half second, I don't know if you've got to get to another show.
Steve, I don't, but
okay.
Shoot,
I sold on Iowa.
Off the top of my head, I look at these schedules like you do. Iowa got a easy draw last year. There was no Ohio State, Michigan State. They got Penn State. Sean Clifford got hurt, so good team, but that helped them out. Those games have been supplanted. Those Rutgers and Maryland, or in Indiana and Maryland, they've got Ohio State and Michigan to deal with this year.
Yeah. It's crazy. I have them 5-7 and 2-7 in the Big Ten, and I just think some people are going to get their comeuppance on Iowa this year. I just, when you can't generate any offense at all, and that puts every team you play in the game with you, even Rutgers is now, you are now playing down to Rutgers level if you can't score points. And at Rutgers, I felt pretty good that they would win that. And Northwestern at home, I felt pretty good that they would win that. But the rest of their Big Ten schedule is Michigan at home. I don't like that. At Illinois, I've always been a big Burt Beelzebub guy. I don't know why, but what he did last year was awesome. I mean, it was a great year. They were one win away from going to a bowl game. I mean,
Penn State in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, you're telling me Iowa's going to roll into Illinois and just have their way with Illinois? I don't think so. I don't think so. At Ohio State, they can forget it. Northwestern at home, I like that. At Purdue won 9 games last year, and Purdue also beat them 24-7 in Iowa City. You're telling me they're going to roll into West Lafayette and be favored to win that game? I mean, maybe if Purdue's 3-6, but I don't know. Wisconsin at home, nut cruncher, 20-17. Flip a coin, whatever. At Minnesota. They're going to beat Minnesota at Minnesota. I got some people in my poll picked Minnesota to win the division. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And then finally, Nebraska. If there is a team in America that owes Iowa any more than Nebraska, I want to see it. We were driving up to Michigan last year, Mark, listening to this game on the radio on Black Friday, and Nebraska is up 2 touchdowns, up double-digit points the whole way, and then Nebraska gets a punt blocked and turns it over deep in their own end, and the analysis I always say is Nebraska is Charlie Brown and Iowa is Lucy Van Pelt, and as soon as Charlie Brown plants that left foot and is ready to swing the right leg to kick the ball, Lucy Van Pelt has picked that football up off the ground, and Charlie Brown, does his thing. I mean, the scores, 28-21 last year, 26-20, 27-24, 31-28. I mean, there's 4 games right there decided all by a score in the last 4 years, all going Iowa's way, and they've been outplayed in all 16 quarters probably by Nebraska. I mean,
if two of those games was the last play of the game.
Yeah, to me, Nebraska has had enough hard luck for 12 football programs in the last 6 years, and I think that this is the year. I got them winning 8 games. I got them going to a bowl game, and I got them winning at Iowa in the last game of the season. I don't know why. It's just
well, to extend on your point, Steve, Nebraska was able to play them that close with Iowa playing for the division championship.
Yes.
And Nebraska was playing with its backup quarterback, Logan Smothers, who had never played a game.
And couldn't go to a bowl game. Couldn't go to a bowl game even if they won. Now, I know Rutgers got in with 5 wins as a replacement team, but, they were a 4-win team. They weren't going anywhere. So they were the hardest luck team in America. I mean, how many, 3 – even the Ohio State game may have been a 9-point spread, but it went down to the last play, or the last 2 minutes. So, they outplayed Ohio State for 2.5 quarters in that game, in my opinion.
Steve, you've got Iowa beating Northwestern and Rutgers, correct?
For sure. No question.
Those are the
no
two.
question.
And you've got them breaking off the fence the wrong way on the rest of them.
On a lot of them, yeah. Maybe 3 Big Ten wins. I don't know. I'm down on Iowa. You can't win football games just on defense alone. I mean, I think they're so if you stop the run, they're done. They're just done and done, to my way of thinking, but I don't know.
Yeah, they beat a lot of bad football teams close. They barely beat Colorado State. And they're a bad football team, and they were losing that game at halftime. And the 3 games that they lost before the bowl game, they just got shellacked.
Yeah.
So when it doesn't fall to script for them, then look out. It's ugly. All right, our Buckeyes edition for another week. Thanks to Steve and thanks to everybody out there. Appreciate you being here. Good crowd. You probably missed most of what we had to say because we typically hit the highest numbers near the end of the show. So you just go back and watch what was recorded. It should be posted immediately. And join Steve at Bucknuts, and we'll be back here next Wednesday or at some point next week, probably next Thursday because of Big Ten Media Days.
Yep.
All right, Steve. Have a great trip to Indy.
All right. We'll see you next week.